prose and poetry have different musics, right? I think of poetry as a heightened music. It's sort of like a sitting within music. Whereas prose, I think of prose more in terms of pacing.
Welcome to The Glimpse. I'm your host, Hannah Lowe. Jason Allen-Paisant is a Jamaican scholar and award-winning poet. His debut collection, Thinking with Trees, won the 2022 OCM Bocas Prize for Caribbean Poetry. Self-Portrait as Othello, his second collection, won the Forward Prize and the T.S. Eliot Prize in 2023. His latest work is titled The Possibility of Tenderness. Jason Allen-Paisant is our guest today on The Glimpse. Jason Allen-Paisant's poems are searching, embodied and philosophically alive, moving between landscapes, languages and ways of knowing. His work is especially attentive to the relationship between nature and the black body, returning again and again to the question of how the self is read, felt and situated within rural and pastoral spaces. Drawing on lived experience, theory and memory, he explores migration, labour and race with a meditative depth, allowing lyric beauty and intellectual inquiry to coexist. These are poems that think and feel at once, expansive yet grounded, full of rhythm, reflection and profound attentiveness to being in the world. I'm so glad to have him here on The Glimpse with us. Jason, welcome.
Hannah, so good to be chatting with you.
I've so been enjoying reading your work recently, and the last thing I read by you was actually your memoir, The Possibility of Tenderness. Then I went back to Thinking with Trees, and I thought to myself, wow, I wonder if this is one of those sort of projects where the poems came first, and then that enabled the memoir, or what the relationship is between poetry and memoir for you.
The relationship is something I think about quite a lot. Grateful to that question. I had started thinking about the memoir toward the end of putting the Thinking with Trees together. That's the collection of poems. And Thinking with Trees was such an organic project, which was, it felt like a sort of poetic ethnography for me, or autoethnography, where it's going again and again to a specific place, going back over seasons, tracing and tracking the relationship of the body to a space. And all through that, at least towards the end, the questions became so enduring in a way that I felt like it was a project that wanted to be lived with some more. So I said, well, perhaps the best way of doing this is through prose, because prose offers this broad canvas on which you can do so many things. It's not that you can't do so many things in poetry, but poetry, as we know, thinks through rhythm. Prose and poetry have different musics, right? I think of poetry as a heightened music. It's sort of like a sitting within music, whereas prose, I think of prose more in terms of pacing. I use poetry as a way of, the way I think about it as breaths, inhalations, moments of breathing deep before setting off again.
I understand. I thought the book was full of music, actually, the memoir. But let's hear now the poem that you've decided to read today.
It's Walking with the Word Tree. Walking with the word tree. To have money is to have time. To have time is to have the forests and the trees. I look at my baby mind sliding in the sticky film of the bud, rubbing her thoughts between fingers and knowing the purple lips of the involucres in her mouth. And me, am I living my childhood all over again? For her, a wood will not be burned for fire coal, where the pig pen is, where you hide from your mama, where you escape from scolding and rolling eyes, where the duppies live. where the madman lives, where wild animals, stray dogs, and the unwanted go to die. And me? Am I living my childhood all over again? A child's way of pinching flowers, a child's way of touching buds, but what I had never known, this way of listening to the forest. Did Daisy, Miss Patsy's 11th child, and my playmate even know her name was a flower? In Poros, life was un-pastoral. The woodland was there, not for living in, going for walks or thinking. Trees were answers to our needs, not objects of desire. Wood fire. Catch butterflies along the way to grandmother on the other side of the yam field. Just don't do something foolish, like lose the money or take too long so the pot don't cook before daddy reach home. There's a way of paying attention to plants, a way of listening to trees, a way to hold a flower in your hand now that I'm here in a park in England and I stop when called by the pistils of a tree. There is something in the pink that speaks so clearly to me, saying, "Glad you stopped. I saw you from far away." I don't even know what they call it, but I want to know what it tells me about itself, its appearance with thousands of others on this tree that up to April seemed like death. Our parents and grandparents planted yams, potato slips, reaped tomatoes, carrots, and so on, then market, then money, then food, then clothes, then shoes to go to school. Now, I'm practicing a different way of being with the woods, only I try not to stray too far from the path. The daisies glitter at my feet.
Thanks so much, Jason. It's such a beautiful poem that seems to do a lot of kind of temporal and spatial manoeuvring, across time and place, from where the speaker is located now in the park in England, and then the memory of the un-pastoral in Jamaica. And I found that just so interesting, the different meaning of nature in this poem from the speaker's childhood to how they encounter now as nature as leisure, which I'm guessing was not the case at all. The pastoral in your poem, it's not just practical, it's also a place of where the unwanted go to die and where the madman live and where the duppies live. So there's a spiritual element as well as a practical element in the nature of your childhood, would you say?
Yes. And it's good that you mention the pastoral because, well, I realized that my impulse was not just to talk about Poros and Coffee Grove being unpastoral, and I probably put too fine a point on it there. It certainly did have a lot of stopping to want to be with nature, to communicate with the trees and the plants, and to pay attention. This quality of attention was certainly there. And I think when I wrote the poem, I was sort of trying to say we didn't have that. It was only work and toil that we have. But that's wrong, actually. And that's the beauty of a work over a duration. You get to think about things again. In the non-fiction book, you see that I'm working out those ideas. But to come back to unpastoral, I wanted to write a nature poem that wasn't pastoral, and not only that, but that interrogated the pastoral genre. So it's more than laying out that it is a privilege and unpacking what goes into it. It's also saying all bodies should have the right to that kind of slowness, to that kind of lavishness.
Yeah, to luxuriate.
Of time, to luxuriate in the sounds of nature and the time to listen and to connect.
What nature could be when it is more than just a resource, I guess.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But Hannah, I'd also add that the third layer or element of the poem is looking at lives and people who actually toil and work. That also is a relationship with nature.
Of course.
Farming, which as we know is hard work. It's not a romantic thing to farm the land, you know. It involves hardness. And I think we need to go as far back as Virgil and the Georgics to see any, a real engagement with the land in those terms.
What I was interested in this poem as well, Jason, is your attention to language. So the language of nature, which I think you both know in the poem. There's a word that I can't even pronounce. How do you say it? Involucres?
Involucres.
Involucres.
Yes.
Which is part of a flower.
Yes, and which I learned in the process of going on these walks, that it is interesting how much poetry can teach us about plants as well.
Absolutely. I think I probably doubled my vocabulary through writing poetry. But so there's this sense of you now knowing the language, like with the word pistils as well. But there's also that question in the poem about Daisy, Miss Patsy's 11th child. Did she even know that her name was a flower? So it got me thinking about how the politics of botanical naming in the Caribbean, it's a site of, I perceive a kind of a conflict there between sort of European Western botanists who went into the Caribbean and just named plants whatever they wanted, and then the rich linguistic history in the Caribbean in terms of the naming of like medicinal plants. I thought there was a real moment of mourning in that poem. Did Daisy even know that that name came from a flower?
Yes, and it just puts it there and moves on.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do the politics, quote unquote, but quietly. And what I was going for was just this feeling which I think that some readers might get, and I think readers will get it, that it's deceptive. It feels quiet. It's because I just put it there and you move on.
Yeah.
To move on to a next sort of contemplation or lyric moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going for the disarming. I was going for, we can sort of put the politics within the lyric, or we can actually use the lyric for political reasons.
Yeah, and it all exists in the white space around the poem, which is another reason poetry can really work for us. I wanted to ask you about fatherhood in your poem. Like the image of seeing your daughter walking, playing in nature seems to return you to your own childhood, maybe offering the chance or like an urge to live it again. Did becoming a parent prompt you to revisit and reevaluate your own childhood? And if so, were you surprised by how that comparative looking back entered your work?
I think it did, Hannah. I'm pretty sure it did. This poem was written a little bit before the pandemic, perhaps a year before the pandemic, and it was after I moved into Roundhay Park, which is that green space that I've talked about, and in which I went on a lot of walks with my daughter, my first child, who was around 2 or probably even less than 2 at the time. I have no doubt that the fact of looking at her, observing her in her relationship with plants and buds and touch and sensual contact with this entire world was helping to fuel my thinking. And in fact, now that I consider it, perhaps it was a big part of what energized and enabled the thinking in the first place. here you've got me moving into this green space to live on the edge of this park with its sprawling woodlands and with all this green that's inspiring me, that's triggering the memory of Coffee Grove, which is rural Jamaica in the mountains where I grew up, in that heavily wooded and earth-centered, land-centered environment. And I think having my daughter by my side and being able to go with her and to watch her and to observe her was a big, must have been, and I'm grateful for the question, because it's the first time that I'm considering it. That must have been part of the mix that created this opportunity, that created this wellspring of thinking from which the book emerged.
Let's go for a break now. When we come back, we're going to hear you read the poem that inspires you.
We hope you're enjoying this season of The Glimpse. It's just one small part of the Adrian Brinkerhoff Poetry Foundation.
We're the founders, Peter
and Kathy Halstead. Our goal is to make great poetry more accessible to everyone, and we do that in a variety of ways, through partnerships, our film series, this podcast, and our website, brinkerhoffpoetry.org.
We hope these works will lure you into a parallel universe, the way a Mobius strip brings you into another dimension without leaving the page you're on.
Thank you so much for listening.
Jason, welcome back to The Glimpse. We're now going to hear you read a poem that you've chosen today as an inspiration. Feel free to read the poem or say anything about why it inspires you before.
I encountered this poem while studying at Oxford. I was there doing my doctorate and trying to work out how to be a poet and trying to be a better poet. And I stumbled on this poem by Szymborska, the Polish poet. And I know that this poem unlocked something in me. I feel that I needed this poem to give me a language for what I would later talk about in my own poetry. In Thinking with Trees, which was my first book of poems. What was this poem giving me? It was giving me poetry as a philosophical gaze on the natural world. And it was a good example for me. I've never seen the philosophical charge of thinking about small things, minute things in nature, thinking about flowers and all these things that don't catch our gaze in that big way. And with such restraint is also what I admire. So I'm going to read the poem. The Silence of Plants, Wisława Szymborska. A one-sided relationship is developing quite well between you and me. I know what a leaf, petal, kernel, cone, and stem are. And I know what happens to you in April and December. Though my curiosity is unrequited, I gladly stoop for some of you, and for others I crane my neck. I have names for you: maple, burdock, liverwort, heather, juniper, mistletoe, and forget-me-not. But you have none for me. After all, we share a common journey. When traveling together, it's normal to talk, exchanging remarks, say, about the weather, or about the stations flashing past. We wouldn't run out of topics, for so much connects us. The same star keeps us in reach. We cast shadows according to the same laws. Both of us, at least, try to know something, each in our own way. And even in what we don't know, there lies a resemblance. Just ask, and I will explain as best as I can, what it is to see through eyes, why my heart beats, and how come my body is unrooted. But how does someone answer questions never posed, when on top of that, she is such an utter nobody to you? Undergrowth, shrubbery, meadows and rushes. Everything I say to you is a monologue, and it is not you who's listening. A conversation with you is necessary and impossible, urgent in a hurried life, and postponed for never.
Thank you, Jason. It's just such a lovely poem. It's witty and
It's witty.
Yeah, it's witty, and it has got just a fantastic tone. A large part of the poem is sort of hypothetical, isn't it? With the speaker kind of dreaming what would happen if the plants would commune. So that's what I take away from the poem. It's a sort of whimsical poem about imagining if nature or plants did want to talk back to the speaker. This acknowledgement at the end that they don't.
Yes.
It feels like an early precursor to me of sort of increasing focus in ecological writing on the non-human.
Yes, I see what you mean. I get excited by speculative poetry, and any attempt or the whimsicality, if you will, or just the joy of speculating on what would happen, or what is actually happening in this relationship between you and me. I think it is in some way. She's saying, well, somehow I need to talk to you, but you're not answering back. And she's asking what it is to be in a relationship with a plant. That's a speaking relationship where the other conversant can't converse. And I think what I just love about it is that it just makes us think about the human non-human relationship, right? The relationship of the human and what's driving us. We love to talk, right? And that's the thing.
We love to name.
We love to name. Mm-hmm. Thank you. And those are the things that make us feel precisely that we're in control.
Absolutely.
That we are sort of at the top of the food chain. But I think the poem is, with all its human, this is what I love, the wittiness, it is subtly making us rethink and just think about and think more deeply about those relationships.
Again, it's full of those long lists of names, related to nature. Really dig into what you said there about the whole idea of how we try to control humans. We write our lists, we come up with our definitions. And of course, there's a lot of lamentation now in the world about the way some words are being lost from our vocabulary of nature, precisely because the things themselves, the plants, the organisms themselves are being lost. So I see that in your poem and this poem, this attunement to language and naming.
Absolutely, I do see it too, and it did take me a while to remember Szymborska's poem.
Yeah, I kind of became obsessed with the names, the beautiful, sort of jumpy and poetic names of in Jamaica of plants, things like Shame Old Lady, and those sorts of plants, and they're so different from the sort of very English sounding to me, but of course there'll be words in Polish, maple, burdock, liverwort.
It's wonderful to look at these poets who you realize after a while have become a part of your poetic DNA. You've absorbed them into the DNA of what you do as a poet. And she's one of them, alongside notables like Derek Walcott, whom I studied for a long time, trying to write like Walcott. Thank goodness I didn't stop doing that. But Lorna Goodison, Brathwaite, Forrest Gando did something very big for me with core scenes from the the world. I hope I'm not butchering the title of, but that collection by Forrest Gander.
Yeah, I know.
I think was very, very crucial for me as a poet developing my own voice.
Yeah, all of us, I think, have these lodestar poets, the ones that we go back to sometimes, but other, as you said, you put it so articulately, that they enter our DNA and perhaps we don't even consciously think about it. But next thing we know, we're writing a poem that's in conversation with that poet. And it's wonderful to have been in conversation with you today. Thanks so much for joining me, Jason, and thanks everyone for joining us for The Glimpse. Thanks for joining us today. I'm your host, Hannah Lowe. Jason's poem, Walking with the Word Tree, is from Thinking with Trees, published by Carcanet in 2021. Copyright Jason Allen-Paisant. Wisława Szymborska's The Silence of Plants is from Miracle Fair. The compilation and English translations by Joanna Tresiak, copyright 2001, used by permission of W.W. Norton and Company. Coming up next week, poet Neil Campbell talks about finding inspiration as a new father in the midst of sleep deprivation, practicing patience with the page, and why success later in the career is more beneficial to a poet. Make sure to subscribe to The Glimpse wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find episodes on our website, brinkerhoffpoetry.org/podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. Drop us an email at theglimpsepoetrypodcast@gmail.com. The Glimpse is a production of the Adrian Brinkerhoff Poetry Foundation. I'm your host, Hannah Lowe. Our senior producer is Jennifer Wolfe. Kat Yore is our technical director and mixing engineer. Editorial director Amanda Glassman is our curator and production coordinator. Amy Holmes is the Foundation's executive director, and our co-founders are Kathy and Peter Halstead. Thanks for listening.